I want to talk about what God's doing in Florida. Troy and his family came down in 2014. Is that it? Is that when you guys moved down? 2014, so about 4 years ago. And so Steve, myself, and a few other families had the blessing of joining that team that Troy pioneered. To date, we're seeing God do some awesome things. Right now we have around 600 people in our network throughout the state. We are running a state strategy. We have about 17 different teams scattered throughout the state. 96 gatherings that are meeting in a house. About a third of those identify as church. And for the last year, we've seen 89 new baptisms out of those churches that have started. So that's been really encouraging. At the same time, there's plenty of challenges along the way, definitely. But anyway, I'll speak to some of the things that are going on in different cities. Right now, I would say one of the more encouraging cities has been Jacksonville, where 3 guys there who are trying to take ownership of the No Place Left vision. And they all have a plan to start a residency, each of them individually, next month in June. So that's really exciting. One of the cool things I think that we've learned is that we just did a 4 fields training in Jacksonville, and as a result of that, those guys got together and said, we need to start a residency, all of them individually. And then a lot of the people who were there who weren't really doing anything came away saying, I'm going to start a church in my home, starting with my family. Mm-hmm. And so that was really encouraging. And that's something I think that's been consistent. As we've done a few 4 fields trainings now in the state, I would say probably the last 4 or 5 of them, there's always been people at the end of them who are like, I'm in. I want to do this. And a lot of those individuals now are leading the No Place Left vision strategy in their particular city around the state of Florida. So most of those 17 teams are in the emerging stage. There's maybe, I would say, out of the 17, 4 that are a little bit more sustained. Area that we live in being one of them that Troy and Rachel have helped start and pioneer. Another really encouraging one is in Gainesville right now. So, with Rick and one of Rick's Timothy's, Dan, they're both mobilizing, Rick going to Southern Cal and then Dan going over to PAC. So I would say Rick's grandson in the faith, Jackson. How about that, dude? He's a guy named Jackson, and he's a beast. He's a stud. He's taking complete ownership. You have a grandson in the faith, dude. It's so sweet. But anyway, he's taking ownership of the vision there, and there's also a really strong college ministry there named Gator Christian Life at UF's campus. That a guy named Mateo is kind of leading. A lot of you here know Mateo. They are receiving a lot of different coaching from a lot of different wells, but they are fully committed to the 4 fields process. They're using a lot of the same tools. Their campus gatherings are all 3/3 gatherings, and they're training their people to go out and share regularly. That's been really encouraging. So a lot of those gatherings too are really healthy. All of them, for the most part, have almost all 9 functions of the church circle existing, so that's pretty encouraging, except for the giving piece. That's usually one of the ones that's added in last, especially on the college campus, right? But anyway, and then I think another really encouraging thing, I wish this guy was here, but Kevin, a lot of you guys know Kevin. He is doing incredible work down in Boynton Beach, which is about an hour south of where we're living. And there's just a lot of fruitfulness that's happening there, a lot of disciples being birthed, and a lot of churches forming. Kevin does not speak Spanish, but there's a little Spanish team that just started up recently, and Kevin is slowly giving them 4 fields training as he can. They're bilingual, but pretty much when he gets together with them, they're talking in Spanish the whole time. He's just watching and then just every once in a while interjecting with some sort of training in English, and they just go through it and practice it all, which is really cool to watch. And so he's got a lot of Timothys. He's got a true Timothy church where I think there's about 9 of them that gather with him on a Sunday night, and they're all doing this. So that's been really encouraging to watch what God's doing there through him. And let's see. Yeah, really the main work though is happening along the East Coast. We do have some people who are laboring in Tampa. And in Fort Myers, Chuck and Debbie have a spiritual great-grandson who's pioneering a work in Fort Myers right now, which has been really awesome. Quint and Carson Hoagland, they're doing incredible work. I've seen a lot of movement just through his oikos at his work. He just started a new job and went after a bunch of his employees. Some of them came to faith, baptized him not too long ago, and he's doing church in his home. So it's been really cool. That just started at the beginning of the year, and so things are really progressing fast. So thank you for your guys' spiritual leadership in their lives. But anyway, things are going really well. I'm going to let my wife Dana and Steve also talk about some of the other things that God's doing, so I don't dominate the whole time. So go ahead, man.
Go ahead, Dan.
All right. I think things that are encouraging for me are I have some disciples in the recovery segment of our city, and words from my disciples' mouth is I'm going to stop sponsoring people and start discipling people. So I'm just really praying that the town hall fellowship center that's going on, they have meetings probably 6 times a day, that would turn into a church, and they just do church 6 times a day. So just praying for a movement through recovery. And then the other encouraging thing through Jacksonville is just being family on mission. And so Steve's family and our family always bringing our kids to trainings and just modeling life together. And through that, in Jacksonville, we saw more wives coming throughout the week to the meeting or to the trainings. And so that was super encouraging. They're all starting churches in their homes from those guys that were there. And so they're getting their families involved right away, which is really encouraging. And so
people see those pictures. At the UK 4-day training, you had whole families there with kids. So they see this example of families just training together.
Yeah, so it's just been super encouraging and awesome. Like, I know Steve's kids made a huge impact on, was it the pastor or the training guy that was talking about Ella and how it like encouraged him?
Trinity Fitness.
The Trinity Fitness team. And just Ella's example, and they were just blown away by her. So like, man, putting our kids out there and seeing, they're much greater than we are, and the work that they can do as well. So yeah, that's been encouraging for me. So, Steve?
We've had really clear vision and mission, and Justin White was asking me kind of what the vision was for, gap areas like Miami. And it's really nothing profound. You go where lostness is, you run the play, and you're faithful. And there's seasons where it's really hard, and there's seasons where, things you love die away, and things you didn't know were there come up. And you see the fruit of, I think I've been seeing a lot more recently, the fruit of people that have served their lives and poured out into it, and things they didn't even know they left. Are coming up, and things are being rebirthed. So working with legacy pastors, legacy churches, going to gap areas like Miami, which has been on a burden for at least my family since October. And we looked at it and go, there's just too many people there. There's too much lostness. There's too much need. And when you get there are people that are just starving for hope. And how do you grapple a place where everybody wants to tell you that that's where church planners go to die? They said the same thing about LA. We're seeing growth there. So we're seeing teams form. We're seeing people capture a heart that can only be given by the Holy Spirit. Getting on the college campuses where, other places are just, there's obstacles. And I think that's one thing that I'm really figuring out is that sometimes the obstacles are our strength. And where we're weak, that's where we need to press in, Lord, you're going to do the most. So where there's lack of resources, hey, we're nimble, we can go. Where there's lack of leadership, there's all kinds of hope for development. Where there's spiritual attack, there's a certainty, okay, we're heading upstream, we're heading in the right direction. So I'm seeing zeal from people that are saying, I'm going to give my lives to this. and families get inspired to do it. Seeing the young willing to forsake what they have been told and say, I'm going to go after this. How can I serve this full time? So, yeah, that's really encouraging us. I think we're still wrestling with where the gaps are and how to bring those teams together in a way that really comes out of a heart of service. How do we serve each other? How do we lift each other up? How do we come in and, deeply love one another that we see the kingdom of God grow? And do that across the network as far as how do you take a legacy church that's going at a certain speed? It's got to, and have a heart for that. How do you take those who are affluent and really going in directions that are really dynamic, but they're having to give up a lot. So, I think those have been the encouraging things. What are we saying?
Right on the stuff.
Oh yeah, Augie and the Smiths.
They're just taking over the world.
Pretty much.
One country at a
Really,
time.
In summary.
one area. The rest of the world, X18.
I think that goes back to, honestly, is, for Augie and his vision where he's at, that goes back to learning how to serve other teams.
Yeah.
So what does Augie need that, that we can serve? That how can we support his family? How can we hold, him accountable but loosely? How can we invite him in and hand stuff over and and support that? So even me, like I'm asking Augie, as you get leaders and your Timothys develop, we've got natural ends to different countries by the work we're doing in Miami. We've already got connections where like, hey, can you send a Timothy here? Can you send a Timothy there? Not that he has any lack of where he can send his Timothys, but even then providing resources to make sure that they can do that. And then you've got the call back where we're starting to get the, hey, could you bring a Timothy? And we could do a push here. And they've got the freedom to come work with us, and we provide that context, and it brings up, and it lights a whole bunch of little fires in places. Okay, now how do we steward that? How do we cultivate it? How do we set it free? So Augie's a great example of learning how to serve. One of his requests is, as he goes, that we're not just letting him go and saying, okay, Augie's got this. We've got to serve his family and serve him and love and care for him, especially when he's back and he's there. So.
Yeah, we're it.
Yeah.
He doesn't have anybody else looking after him.
Yeah. So having that peer-to-peer level, learning how to do that well.
I would say a couple other things too with what God's doing. So we mentioned a fitness organization called Fitness. This actually came after a conversation we had with Zach at one of our strategy. We have a monthly strategy meeting as a team. We phoned you in on one of the calls. You talked about parachurch ministry organizations, and so we just tried to identify, hey, which ones are we talking with right now? One of those is a fitness up in Jacksonville. And it was cool watching Troy cast vision to them as an organization. They said, hey, that we're doing all the 5 parts. Troy said, are you doing 5 parts or 5 things well? And he went through the 5 parts, the 4 fields, and they said, we think we're doing all those things well except for church. And just asked, hey, well, what's holding you back from that? And it was cool just watching them kind of talk through the dynamics of fear and how they are fearful of allowing some of those partnerships and relationships they've formed with legacy churches in the community. If they were to start planting churches as a parachurch organization, how that might tarnish things. And it was cool watching the Spirit of God really kind of work on their heart. And I believe they left the conversation saying, let's start churches. So that was really encouraging. They had 2 or 3 of their guys at the training all week, and 2 of those guys from their ministry organization went back and started a church in their home, which was really exciting. So they are really fast growing health and fitness club. It's kind of like CrossFit, but they have like a Bible study before every workout and a time of prayer. They do the workout, and at the end they kind of relate the workout to the Bible study and ask if anyone wants to learn more, talk more about Jesus, following him, to hunt down one of the coaches afterwards. If you're new, they walk through a sign-up process where they share the gospel with you while they get all your information. It's pretty cool. And the cool thing is too, it's a donor-based program. So if they say pay what you can to work out. They give suggestions, but anyway, it's a really cool mission organization. But they're slowly growing. They're having work start in Puerto Rico and a couple other different countries. But they've asked us as a team to train all of their coaches through their whole network this summer in ways to share the gospel and make disciples. So we're excited to serve them in that capacity. And another cool thing, there's been a church locally, First Baptist of Jensen Beach, that we formed a really awesome relationship with. Steve's been serving them a lot, and we have a residency that's happening there. To keep a longer story shorter, just one day we went out in the harvest, knocked on the lead pastor's door, didn't know that was the lead pastor's house, and just exchanged. He's like, "Man, who are you people? What are you doing at my door?" You know, and had a really great conversation with them. He's like, "I want to learn more about what you guys are doing." That led to a conversation over lunch, and that led to 3 touches of training, which led to them asking for us, like, "Hey, we want 2 meetings with you guys a month. We love that you're all about making disciples. That's what we want to be about. And so can we learn from you? And how can we serve you?" And so the really awesome partnership is formed, but so much so to the degree now in which they have verbally said, and also, I would say they've also fleshed this out physically as well, but they've released complete authority to their people to start churches that meet in homes in the community where the giving does not come back to the mothership. So completely autonomous churches that have no connection to the mother whatsoever. So they verbalized that, and there is a church with some of their own people that has started out in the community. And Steve's been shepherding that work a lot. So that's been really encouraging. And so we're trying to figure out how we can continue to serve them well, but also learn from that, and also cast vision to other churches in the community to say, "Hey, could this happen with you as well?"
Out of that, Jerry Smith, Sissy, leading work in Cape Verde, Africa, seeing multiple streams of 4th-generation churches over there.
Yeah. It's been good. So we're out of time. So stockages, I would say very similar to everything that you guys have been sharing. Critical mass is a stockage. I would say sometimes the follow-up process, even with newer believers, has been a challenge. Sometimes just asking people for their time sometimes feels like pulling teeth, you know? So there just seems to be, whether it's an unwillingness to meet or just a lack of desire to grow. But those have been some challenges that we've been facing. And I don't know, any other ones that you contribute to that?
Praying and fasting has been really key. And I would say the things that I'm praying and fasting for are, I value the seed sower and those who are just going to make disciples in a brand new way now. But I'm also praying for those who just have such a heart to pour out to others. You know, those leaders, that humble leader. So I know that's kind of covering all dynamics, but it's really those two. I'm praying on both ends. I'm praying for hundreds of seed sowers and seeing people catch the vision for that, but also, you know, those key humble leaders that will shepherd things. So I'd say right there is where we're looking for that handful of leaders that will take ownership, how to cultivate that.
Awesome, guys. Cool. One last thing. I know we're out of time, but I just want to say one more thing. We have seen some churches start out of the harvest. They are in continuation today. One's over 2 years old. I've been able to hand off leadership and appoint elders in that church. All of my functions are being practiced. It just takes a lot. There's been a lot of ups and downs with that particular. There's a few churches that we have in our network that have started from a house peace search. It does take a lot of love and care and time with those churches, more so than a church that starts from an oikos. But we have experienced that, and anyway, so just wanted to mention that. But we've seen, I think most of it has happened through oikos. I think that's kind of a universal thing throughout the states, at least, and maybe overseas as well. But anyway, I'd love to talk more about that too, some other time if you guys want to. All right.